Yo, yo, how we doing? Good evening? It is currently midnight, actually, at least where I'm at. And hold on, let me turn down this music really quick. Bit of a wild day today. So I took like four traits total. Two of them should just not have taken them, and then that last one probably shouldn't have taken it either. I think it was just a bit of a forced entry, trying to recover the losses, and have a couple lessons to learn from today, which we'll go over as we go over these traits. But anyways, coming into the morning, if we just take off all our drawings, right? Um, we've been trending since we put in that low on Friday. We had the overnight trending. I had my zones marked out. Um, we created this low volume node just from a higher time frame, right? Um, this became a low volume node. You can even look at it maybe till like right before market open, right? Still a low volume node. This is still a low volume node. By the time we were approaching market open, this had become a 1 hour inverse. So if you look at it here, right, that's 1 hour for value gap. It I had it marked out as a resistance zone because it was bearish for value gap with a little bit of low volume on the volume profile there. And yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind. And I also had this other low volume area marked out in here. I forgot to mark out this, right? That's on me, but that pretty much became irrelevant since we displaced through it. What I did fail to mark out was this high over here, which I'll get into in just a second. And this is actually the start of a 1 hour fair value gap. This is something that I did not have marked out. I should have just been more meticulous when it came to just marking out my zones, marking out any potential points of reversal. So yeah, it's whatever, because you could look at like I'm usually marking out low volume nodes, right? I could look at like, okay, is there a fair value gap inside that low volume node? I feel like that I should be more, uh, have a bit more of attention to detail when it comes to that kind of thing. I could have also marked out this intermediate high, which is just a high inside a fair value gap. Could have been a great target if I entered maybe rep before market open or something like that, but we'll get into it here in just a second. But yeah, so a few things I had in mind is previous day's range was neutral. We didn't have quite a stat behind that because Friday didn't break. I believe Friday didn't break Thursday's high or low, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. Let me double check. Yeah. So this is Friday's candle. It didn't break Thursday's high or low, so that's neutral on that. But since we did have that bit of a recovery on Friday, I'm like, okay, we're recovering, trying to recover from the 3 day red streak that we had. Um, so yeah, that's what we had in mind. It looked like we wanted to recover. Overnight had been trending. I expected today to be a trend day. And then just looking at the confluences, right? We did have Asia low and London low intact below us. But I didn't expect us to get there. Not really. And by the time, this is 9:25, by the time that candle closed, it actually put in equal lows here, if I'm not mistaken. So this is 846.50, and this is 846. Yeah, that's equal lows. And you would think, okay, if we get a retrace, maybe into this area, since this is technically a resistance zone. Actually, had it marked out like this. Initially, it was a hourly for rally gap, hourly low volume node. If you look at ES at this point in time, right? Okay. Um, uh, yeah, we're gonna replay both, I guess. I don't know why it's doing that. Gonna fast forward one. Yeah, here we go. So if you look at ES, we're looking at this low right here. You see, ES swept it, right? So this low got SMT'd, but I did have it marked out just in case. Um, just in case we wanted to sweep it later. But yeah, that's what I looked at first. I'm like, okay, this is a 50-minute intermediate low. We made equal lows on Q, but we did S&T it, so I'm like, okay, maybe we actually want to hold this low volume node now turned into an inverse, right? Then I kind of wanted to wait. We barely tapped that overnight VWAP. And you can also notice, right, we've been riding that upper VWAP band all freaking day. Barely got below it around 7 a.m. Got right back up above it, and then right before market open, we got below it one more time. But then I wanted to wait for something clear. If maybe we got like a clear sweep of this low into that VWAP, maybe I could have been looking to enter longs. But market open trades are usually very risky because of how volatile they are. So yeah, I wasn't really looking to take any trades. I even noted that I wanted to wait for a clear manipulation or a displacement. So if we wanted to continue higher, I wanted to see clear manipulation to then target all-time highs. And then if I wanted to see maybe shorts come into play, I wanted to see clear displacement and then continue lower. But yeah, I was favoring longs, of course, at first, and for a while actually. So yeah, I waited for a few minutes after market open, and yeah, around this point we put in a 15-minute fair value gap and a low volume node and two 5-minute gaps. So if you look at the 15-minute here, right, that's a gap right there, and I believe we actually ended up putting in another 15-minute gap if we fast forward to this candle. Yeah, right here. So we put in the gap here, so that's how I have it marked out. This is also a 5-minute intermediate low, so you can mark it out like that. So this is a 5-minute intermediate low, and the reason for that is this candle did trade into this 5-minute gap, but I wanted to have the whole low volume node area marked out, and I'm actually gonna pull up Bookmap as to what I was seeing. It's this low volume node right here, where aggressive buyers stepped in, and yeah, that's what I was looking at in terms of order flow, and I wanted to wait for a clear, retrace into it, and then I think it was in this candle, maybe the next one. No, it's the one after this one. So here is where I took my entry during the formation of this candle. My entry was actually like 947.75, so not the best entry. In hindsight, it doesn't look as great. I had my stop at this low, and then I was targeting all-time highs all the way up here. So that's the same. So this was my entry. Obviously, it's going to show us close, but we know that's not the case because we entered there. But this is the entry that I took initially, and I thought it looked good because if you see Bookmap here, we had a bit of failed selling coming into there. Had more aggressive sellers stepping in, but we rejected out of it, and I think I waited a bit too long. Something that I did take note of is if we're getting a continuation off of slow retrace, we can attempt to bottom tick, like maybe get closer to where that wick's going to form, or where we're expecting for that wick to form. That's something that I had to refine with my strategy. But yeah, it's just, I feel like it's just a matter of market experience because it's not something you can backtest, especially if you're using order flow as one of your confluences or maybe your entry confirmation, which is what I am using. Also, at this point, this zone had become an IFVG. So it became support. And we're actually going to remove the middle line to make it a bit cleaner looking. But yeah. Once I saw this candle print, I'm like, okay, cool. It's looking good. But there's one slight problem with this. Once this high gets bid in, right here, right? We come over to Bookmap, look at our order flow. Look what it's doing. The high here, significantly lower CVD. It's like a 10,000, not 10,000. It's like 1,000 difference. It's a pretty massive difference. So obviously it's not a CVD divergence. Like we didn't take out that high. If we did, that would have been an IP high break, which would have been perfect. But there's a massive lack of buyers there. To me that looks like exhaustion. I'm not that. I don't really have that much knowledge of that concept. It's decently new to me. I'm more familiar with absorption, um, but then we retested that upper VWAP band. It was looking good still. Then not so good. And then it just ended up stopping us out. There's no reason to delay it, but yeah, this is what I was looking at. Oh, actually, I'm gonna do this. Yeah. Um, so this ended up stopping me out, and the two things that I noticed off of this trade was, for starters, I'm fine with this loss. I feel like it was a good trade. I think my entry could have been closer to the VWAP once I saw this. And also, if you put in a fib of just New York session, um, you'll see it actually tapped into the 382 right here. 382 is right here. So it's a little above VWAP. So had a bunch of confluences. You could have entered off the bounce there. Like, as you saw, the candle was going to turn bullish. But, yeah. Um, and the other thing was that I failed to see that CVD, the massive decrease in CVD around these highs. And, yeah, I feel like if I had a closer entry to the wick, I could have trailed more aggressively. Maybe if we had like the ideal entry down here, maybe like our stop below this 5-minute candle, very tight stop, and maybe you could have trailed to this wick once it looked like we wanted to sustain above the upper VWAP band. Maybe you trailed to this body once it looked like we wanted to continue higher. That would have been a 1-to-1 R when it stopped you out, but that's not what happened. This is the entry we took. We got stopped out. Completely fine with it. Then comes my problem with today, which is the next two trades. Actually, the next three trades. I just feel like they should not exist. Um, Bookmap was looking like there was a lot of aggressive selling coming off of this hourly gap. It actually wicked it. If you see 975.25, the high here is 975.50. It's like by the freaking tick. It tapped that gap and then displaced lower. You could also see it as relative equal highs in a smaller time frame. I believe in the 5-minute actually, but doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it did wick it, and just it's also a low volume note, right? I feel like with these types of conditions, you gotta be very aware of your zones, and you're like, I feel like I was just fixated on the idea of this being a trend day, and just the fact that it didn't have a good entry kind of messed me up. Because I felt like it was a good trade idea. It just ended up not playing out. This is a very, um, what's it called? This trade is heavily backed by confluences. It has a lot of confluences on it. I feel like it's very clean, but it is what it is. And then the next trade I took was around the 0.5, was actually 914.75. So this was the next trade I took. And I believe I was targeting the 0.2 at this point, which is 501 right here. And my stop was the opening candle high on the 5-minute. And the reason for this is I actually want to show you how that looked like on the right here. So this is a little bit of what I was looking at. Yeah, this is what I was looking at, and we're seeing it bounce here at the 0.5. It's also a low volume node, and that's where I entered. Yeah, so that was my entry. I saw a little bounce. That was like my entry confluence and seeing a bit of fail selling, but you can clearly see the next handle goes like that, and then the next handle stopped me out right after. Same thing here with the 786 level. Actually, want to show you that as well. Before I got stopped out on it, before I thought about entering. So we'll go over this together. I was, I saw did not bounce out of the 618, and then I was thinking about longing off of the 786, kind of measuring my RR and measuring an estimated size of my stop. At this point, I'm like, okay, if we get to the 786, I can have my stop at the IB low. And I was just trusting the rejection stat, which I'll show you here in a second. But we're approaching that 786 level. We barely tapped it, and I believe I entered somewhere around here. Let me see. Yeah, there we tap it, reject out of it, and I'm pretty sure I entered within the next few seconds. I was looking to enter, and I'm in there. I'm in there. So that was my entry, and it was 886, right? So 886, not the best entry. 886.25. My stop was IB low. I was just targeting once again that point 2 extension, 103R, and funny enough, I just realized it wasn't looking as good. We can actually look at the replay here, and you know, we get a bit of a dump there. Continued selling. Fast forward. Starts to reject. We actually get a bit of a green candle here in a second. If we can get it. Yeah, there you go. It starts to look good. So at this point, I could have trailed my stop to that wick. But I just ended up not doing that. And this is where Monkey Brain steps in. I believe it was within this candle, maybe the next one. I'm trying to think. Can't quite remember. Yeah, it was within this candle. Is where I just reversed my position. Yeah, that's why I reversed my position. I realized my longs weren't looking as good anymore. So longs weren't looking good anymore. During, I think it was this candle. It would have stopped me out. You can clearly see there. We broke IB low, and the stat that I was talking about, I'll have it load up really quick. But I entered, I want to say somewhere around here. I had my stop at 896.50. 96.50, 861.25 was my entry, and my target was London low, right here. 24, 861.25, 896.50. But I had my. Oh, I think I added to my position. Yeah, I think I added to my position. Hold on. Yeah, I added to my position. I was way over leveraged on this. Bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Yeah, there we go. I I had like 7 micros on this trade, risking about like $500 when my usual risk is 200. But yeah, this ended up playing out. Let me just play it out. I was targeting London. Since it aligned with True Day, there's a stat behind that one, and we'll go over the stats that we have on this. So for initial balance, right, there's the rejection stat, which this stat basically says. No, wait, it's not this one. Oh, it's this one over here. Yeah. So this stat basically says if the IB low is formed first and the IB high is formed second, there's roughly a 74-75% chance of us breaking that IB high. And then once that IB high breaks, there's a statistical value that corresponds to each extension level. So that's why I usually target extensions. And then as far as True Day goes, we can also look at that stat. Today's Monday. It's actually not that great on Mondays, but it's usually between 60 to 70. I want to say 60 to 75% chance that we retrace the True Day, which is just midnight open. So I knew there was a statistical confluence behind targeting True Day, and since it pretty much aligned perfectly with London, I'm like, I'll just target London lows. I figured we were just gonna break IB low and head straight there, but it took a while. It took an hour 30 for me to hit my TP. What started off with 3 losses ended up being a green day. But I did over leverage on that last trade, and some things to note from today's trade, just trading performance overall, is on that first trade perfectly fine except for the entry. Should have had an entry closer to the wick. That the next 2 trades, it was me trying to catch a falling knife. I feel like that's something that I struggle with at times. I feel like it's also a matter of market experience, knowing when I'm either trying to catch a falling knife or when I'm trying to catch a slow retrace to then get a continuation higher or a continuation lower. So yeah, because I prefer to trade continuation. Reversals are very rare for me since I started incorporating order flow into my strategy. It's gotta have a lot of freaking confluences for me to take a reversal. I don't think I've taken one in a long time. Um, I usually try to just take continuations, and yeah, um, that's one thing. That those two reattempts at the longs, it was just trying to catch a falling knife. So what I wrote down in my notes was if I'm looking for a continuation of a slow retrace, which I believe that's what we saw up here, right? That's what we saw up here, and that's why it looked good still when I first looked at it. Um, when I first took that trade, it was a slow continuation, right? And we can actually get rid of those things. So yeah, I mean, if you just look in hindsight, right? We tapped that hourly gap. We broke below the VWAP band. We broke below New York VWAP, and then we broke below overnight VWAP. So we were like, sellers were like yelling at us, "Hey, we're in control here." So yeah, I should have waited for a clear reaction out of one of my confluences, like a bullish candle, maybe then a retest or something like that. Maybe a CVD divergence at the lows. Um, but yeah, I just did not wait for that. Tried to catch a falling knife, and I got cut. Simply put, that's what happened. And then if I want a continuation of an aggressive retrace, I would gotta wait for a clear reaction. That's what I wrote down in my notes. Gotta look for draws and liquidities inside my zones, so like unmitigated gaps, intermediate highs and lows. That's something that I noted. So few like itty bitty mistakes here and there, nothing too crazy. I don't think. I think we'll be fine. Um, we made our mistakes, paid the price, and fortunately we were able to recover from that loss. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the trade recap for today. Um, yeah, we'll see what tomorrow brings. It is pretty late, so I think I'm just gonna call it there. Wake up early tomorrow and yeah, do my pre-market analysis and all that. But yeah, we learn from our mistakes and we get better every single day. Got to keep up with the consistency because it is a game of consistency at the end of the day. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Like I said, hopefully I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Also, sorry for the late upload. Power went out in my house at like I want to say like 5:30 my time, so like 6:30 Eastern, and it came back at like 10 p.m. Eastern. So I couldn't record, couldn't finish my journal. I just now recently finished my journal. Immediately started recording after finishing it, but yeah, happens. Got the work done. Now gotta get some sleep in. So yeah, that wraps up today's video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.